Hi, this is a DrumWise Meets, and today I'm here with Craig Macintyre. Hi, Craig.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
So, my first question for you today, Craig. What age did you get into drums, and when you first started playing, what bands or artists inspired you?
It's debatable when I first got into drums because my brother is 5 years older, and he got a snare drum when he was about 10 that he never played. So from what my family says, I was playing the snare drum from the age of 5, but I don't really remember much. I would say around 8 years old, I did play the snare drum, and I used to build upon it. I used to build, put boxes around it and coffee cans, and I found an old cymbal in a dumpster and put it on a street cone and just sat on my knees. I didn't understand the bass drum. I didn't take any lessons. So, I would try to play along to records, but I would thump on something else thinking it was a bass drum, because I would just hear the sounds. I hadn't seen live music or anything like that. So I was definitely hitting things and loving music, and specifically rock music, what we would call classic rock now. Yeah. But I didn't get a real drum set till I was about maybe 10 or 11, and then it's been nonstop since then. Yeah. I think what's different for me from some other people that I know is I like I said, I didn't take lessons in school. I think I took some violin, but I didn't take drum lessons or anything like that at those early ages. And I had seen live music before I was really serious about drums. So having an older brother, like my first concert was Queen. So that's how young I was going to, and I don't mean Adam Lambert. I mean like the real Queen. Yeah. When I was 8 years old. So I started going to see concerts at that age. Before I was still playing soccer and I was doing all these other things. So I wasn't, I'm going to be a drummer. So I was already collecting records, going to see music at such a young age, before the age of 10, being a music consumer, that by the time I played drums, I was already knew the thrill of it, I guess. It was, just like the like, this is the end result. Like, this could be you someday. I'd already kind of witnessed that part of it. So that was probably, my earliest influence as a drummer, was, probably obviously, like a lot of people from my age, like around the age of 50 now, was Peter Criss from Kiss. That was just the age that you got it. And I soon grew out of that, very, very. I probably grew out of it by the time I saw Queen. Yeah. I said, well, this is serious. So then I would say Roger Taylor from Queen was my hero, my James Dean, and I always thought that always leaves an impression with me, because I'm watching a band that had the greatest frontman of all time, but I'm fixated on the drummer. Even before I said I want to do drums for a living, so that really stuck out. And that was the first, and I could see the side, I could see what his feet were doing, and I just loved the whole thing about it. So he was my first hero. But then it soon just grew after that, very, very quick. So, yeah, but I got a real drum set for Christmas around, I think I had just turned 11, or I was about to turn 11, because my birthday is a little bit after Christmas. So yeah, maybe 10 or 11, got a real drum set and figured out the ergonomics of it and started taking a few lessons. So going to a music store where you're sitting at a teacher's drum set, so I could see what all four limbs were doing, but really very self-taught. Besides that, a few basic lessons, very self-taught, did a lot of things unorthodox, made a lot of mistakes. And then every 5 years, I would get together with real teachers and fix my problems, and I'm always still open to even doing that today, So, but lots of heroes, the very obvious John Bonhams and, all the classic rock people that are still my heroes today, Phil Collins and everybody. And, but also, and I had a different childhood too. So my family's from the UK, and they lived in Glasgow for 30 years. So I'm the only American born in my family. So every summer till I was about 15, I spent in the UK. So, I was really into British music because of that, and had uncles that were turning me on to more British rock, Nazareth and Thin Lizzy and stuff like that, and Thin Lizzy was the first band I actually saw because they opened for Queen. But so, and then at the same time, I had cousins like in London that had just bought this album, London Calling, and all the post-punk stuff, So, so it was, and my brother is not a professional musician, but he's an incredible music consumer still to this day, and has the beautiful stereos and collects all the pristine vinyl and goes really, really deep with music, like really deep. And so having that outlet it became everything, all of a sudden I'm quitting the football team in high school and all these things because music is just, or I was I was small at that time. So I was like getting banged up in football and I couldn't hold my sticks. And I was like, I think I'm a little better at the drums than, football or, these other sports I was doing. So it was pretty obvious definitely by 12 or 13, that it was everything I wanted to do. And then by 14, I was already playing in bars, playing in bands that, these guys were older than me, and I was the 14, 15-year-old being snuck into bars, and not even snuck in. I seemed to get in, no problem. I don't know. I just, I don't know. They didn't care or something, because I looked 14 when I was 14. And so, yeah. Cool. So it's been an obsession since then. And I would say music's been an obsession. Not, I have lots of drummer friends, but I try not to be too drum centric, I can go there in a second, and I love it. But, I want to make sure that I talk about a great album, or great lyrics from an artist. Those things inspire me just as much, Elvis Costello's lyrics or Dylan lyrics, or all these things move me just as much. And some of my favorite drummers are just the guys that happen to be on these records. Jim Keltner is one of my favorite drummers because he plays on all my favorite records. If he played on crappy records that I don't like, he might not be one of my favorite drummers, as good as he is, I love Vinnie Colaiuta when he plays with Sting, but I don't like a lot of this other fusion stuff. It's just not what I'm just not moved by it. So you have to be honest about where your influences come from. Do they come from the music you like, or do they come from watching a video of the guy playing chops, So I'm very much in tune with that kind of thing. So, it's why Ringo is everybody's favorite drummer. It's not because of chops, because he plays on all the best music you could ever hear, Yeah, so absolutely. So, yeah. So that was, so that's, when I play other instruments, I play piano pretty well, I play guitar okay. So I can understand the language. I've always gotten along in bands, and I can suggest play a C minor chord, you should try this for the bridge. And, I pick my battles, cause like what the drummer say before he got fired, hey, you want to play some of my songs? But I try to always, no matter what, even though I've been a session guy for a long time now, and I still try to carry some of that same band mentality that I had as a kid, that we're all in it together. And I never wanted to sound like some stiff session guy, no matter what. If I'm playing with an artist, I might not even like their music, but I want to feel like a band. I want to feel like, hey, we're in the garage and we're making this music together. And that's always my goal, because I don't really know any other way, because I'm not overly schooled, or music's not that easy for me. I can't go into it in a very robotic way. So I don't care what the music is. I'm putting every, ounce of soul into it and squinting my eyes and trying to lock in with, no matter what it is. Could be the silliest music, So I've always resented people that music looks too easy for them. Like they're doing their taxes in their head or something. And I'm like, no, So that's some of the benefit of being more of a self-taught musician, because you do put a different kind of work ethic into it, and then and then when I really started to study and got better at reading, and a great friend of mine just said, hey man, you should really, really get this reading down. And he said, because you have the hard part down. And that really spoke to me a lot. He's like, you got feel, you got good time. Reading is just information, there's no secrets here. You got the part that a lot of good readers are looking for. They're looking for good feel and groove and musicality and ears. So I said, okay, I'm not ever going to take that for granted. So it really made me want to learn the other side of being the student of music, and not beat myself up so much if I can't sight read orchestral music or something, So I basically tried to learn to read what I like. I know what I like what I know, that kind of attitude. And so, I'm, I've been a slow learner, but at this stage, it's like I've been through experiences that I never thought I would, difficult gigs and stuff like that. So I'm kind of ready for anything now, I mean, fast bebop, maybe not, but I've done orchestras, I've done all kinds of stuff. And as long as I don't have to sight read something, as long as I have a couple hours to look over the music, I'm not too intimidated by stuff anymore.
Actually, we'll come back to the reading thing shortly, because you've kind of half answered one of my questions, which is great. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And just to pick up on a couple of things that you said there. So let's start with, you've mentioned a lot of influences there. I think this is a really tough question, and I'd find this hard. If you had to pick just one, you've mentioned quite a few names, but if there was just one drummer, who would be your all-time favorite?
I would say Al Jackson Jr. would probably be, and this is how I think of it. When I hear him play, I smile, like, to this day. And because, digging into all the R&B stuff, all the 60s stuff that he did, all the Stax music, I'm just kind of surprised. I'm always like, it never seems like one, like every backbeat counted. I can't explain it. It's just like, so then I'll hear records that he's never played on. Oh, did you know he played on this record? And oh, I didn't. Then I'll hear the song, and then I just smile. I'm like, that's my guy. And also I'd say why he's my favorite, because to me, for what I like about drumming, I like about music, and where music, in my opinion, kind of went to, I feel like he's kind of year zero, if that makes sense. Now, you know, so if his career started in the early 60s and his just playing pocket, I know he could play jazz. He was, and I know his dad was like a big band drummer or something like that. But as much as we know the history of him, but I never feel like he was a frustrated jazz drummer in a way. Like I feel like he owned that R&B pocket funky music right out of the gate. It wasn't this transition, you know, people like Ginger Baker hated rock and roll, you know. Mitch Mitchell was coming from an Elvin Jones thing. You know, so there was this like hybrid, there was this kind of like crossover. These were all their drum lessons were probably with jazz guys because rock and roll didn't exist. So and then that makes their playing beautiful too, don't get me wrong, you know. But I feel like somebody like Al Jackson, and then I'm going to fast forward to John Bonham too, that I feel like because they had the pocket thing and the groove and the simplicity thing down is why those are the guys that we're talking about today. You know, I've said, you know, and I, you know, Cream is one of my favorite bands, and Ginger Baker in that band was brilliant, and Jimi Hendrix too with Mitch Mitchell. But I've been in the studio for 25 years and nobody has ever brought up Ginger Baker and Mitch Mitchell. John Bonham gets brought up 3 times a day in a studio, you know, as does the Motown drummers and as done the Stax drummers like Al Jackson, you know, those, you know, or play like an Al Green record, which would be mostly Al Jackson. That's just kind of, that's always going to be cool. It's just seemed to be part of our musical language. And it music just became funkier. Rock became funkier. Pop became funkier. Pocket's important. So we hear it in pop today. We hear it in hip hop. You know, it seemed that's why those drummers like Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker, and Carl Palmer, those kind of places, like they never really bought a Motown record, if you know what I mean. So they were still kind of swimming in a very, you know, loosey jazz kind of way, and that's beautiful. But that's why Bonham kind of surpassed those kind of people. So to me, Al Jackson is kind of like, you know, and there's another unsung hero, Roger Hawkins, who did all the Muscle Shoals stuff, who is pretty much neck and neck for me with Al Jackson. Those are the guys that just, those, you know, those are my guy. You know, it'd be a dream to like throw together a Booker T and the MGs like tribute band. Like that would be something cool to do as I'm getting older, you know, like that's, and really try to play that music. I played a lot of that music when I was younger. I had an R&B band, but I was still trying to be like Alex Van Halen, you know, and because I wanted to play arenas, I wanted to be a rock guy. But then, you know, you play in bars and you're playing all these old Motown and Stax songs, but you're doing them poorly, you know. So as you get older, you're like, wow, I wish I could go back and just like, I understand that pocket now. And so yeah, for the long answer, Al Jackson would be, you know, the desert island guy, but very much in second. If I have some honorable mentions, I would say Bonham for sure. And you know, I dig deep into like Zeppelin bootlegs, and my thing is, if on a good night, Bonham was the best rock drummer. On a great night, he was the best drummer, period. Because there's stuff, if you go deep in their bootlegs, and, you know, a lot of people will probably never hear that stuff. They like Zeppelin on a very surface level, but you really listen to like what he was doing in, say, like 1972, and it's just like, no, this was untouchable. This was so ahead of its time, you know? So I don't even think the records do him full justice, you know, and they obviously do him great justice, but so, and then Jim Keltner is, you know, would be there too. And then I love Steve Gadd. Andy Newmark has always been a huge hero of mine. Not enough people talk about him. A huge influence, and also because he was a great kind of pop rock drummer that played a 4-piece kit, you know, and that really stood out to me too, at a time that Neil Peart, Phil Collins, all these people, like, I never had a big drum set. You know, I never could have one, or at my age or whatever, but So after seeing Andy play, and it was just as exciting as a guy with the multiple toms, I said, that's my guy. I love that 4-piece kind of, and that's always kind of been the kits I've played, 4-piece, maybe 2 floor toms sometimes, so yeah.
And actually that leads me very nicely on to my next question. So let's talk about your current setup. When you are able to actually be out touring, gigging, what is your current setup?
So the bass drum I have is a 24 by 14. So very old school. That's a Andy Newmark size, actually. The rack tom is a 9 by 13 on a snare stand, because all the cool kids are doing that. And 2 floor toms, a 16 by 16 probably, or 16 by 14, and an 18 by 16. So pretty standard, be kind of a John Bonham Jr. kind of kid, I call it. It's not completely going to that huge bass drum, but that basic kind of setup. In the studio, I'll just do a 4-piece, but live, it's nice to just have that. I use the 18-inch floor tom, not so much for a lot of phrases. I just use it for the big boom, big end of the song, or if the song just needs that big "We Will Rock You" boom boom thing on it, just to give it a little more thing, and it looks cool on stage. It just beefs up the kit. Just have an 18 there, just if you're on a drum riser or something, it's just like, oh, it's just it just gives you a little more room around it. And then cymbals, 24-inch Light Ride by Zildjian. I've been with Zildjian for like 20 years. These sweet crashes that they make, a 19 and a 20, which are incredible. These K sweet crashes. And then Avidus 15-inch hats, which is Avidus series they came out with a few years ago. Incredible. They sound like old 60s cymbals. And they don't look like a Zildjian. They have a very unique look. And that's pretty much it. Maybe a Crash of Doom fit to those. Zildjian, or these clusters, these K clusters that they make. So that might be my little extra cymbal over where people would put a China. A China is definitely like, that's a committee decision. If you're going to have a China on your, I love them, but I just know I'll hit it too much. Like a splash cymbal, I'll hit it too much. I have nothing in. Why don't you like splash cymbals? I do. I like them so much, I'm not going to put one up. Singers don't like them. That's what it is. So, and I have on certain gigs, I've had to play bigger kits, double kick pedal and stuff, but I'm not a double kick guy. And then, but see, with the current kit, and then I'll have some electronics on the left. The Yamaha Dtx Pad, which is kind of similar to the Roland SPD. I like it better. It's actually got these, I feel the pads, they feel like you're hitting, if you're hitting the pad and then you're going to hit a tom, it has the same kind of rebound, where the SPD is, feels like you're really hitting hard plastic, So, so I'll use that, and then just a couple little, a shaker for something, or a mounted tambourine. But that's the rig. The drums are DW. Been with DW 11 years now, 12 years.
Are you still using your like gong drums to the side for the Goo Goo Dolls stuff?
I started off, not right now. I started off doing just mounting a big bass drum over there. And then for a while, DW came out with this pancake drum, which is just no shell. Incredible. Like, sound guys love it. If you throw the right mic on it, it sounds like an 808. Like, it just and it's got this nice dive bomb thing. So sometimes I'll do that. But once I put up the second floor tom, that kind of became the drum that does that, because I think, like, when we go to Europe and stuff like that, to backline, like, what's a pancake drum, or or like, oh, you want us to throw a bass drum like up high on, you'd be surprised how many backline places they don't even know what to do with that stuff, So I'm like, how about an 18-inch floor tom, and we'll just really turn it up, boom, like. So I kind of got back into that habit, but once in a while, like my singer will be like, "Where's that pancake drum? That's really cool." And I'm like, "All right, we can put it up." I'm not setting up the drums. That's the thing. Even when I don't have to set up my own drums, I still like, I'm still a minimalist. I still feel bad for anybody else to set them up. So I just like to keep it simple. I mean, I feel like I hear the player when it's more of a mid-size to a smaller size kit. I feel like I really hear the player. If the drum set feels too big, I feel like I'm listening. Does it make sense? Like I'm listening more to the drums themselves than like just the simplicity of the player. Or I feel that way about certain like snare drums, like I really love Ludwig snare drums because I feel like I hear the player. If I hear this really high-end snare drum and it's got this beautiful loud crack or something, I feel like I'm hearing the snare drum. It's weird.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm hearing the gear more than the player. So that whole expression, like it's the it's the archer, not the arrow. And so that's just kind of more of a mental thing. I mean, obviously there's guys that play massive kits and they always sound like them. Neil Peart sounds like him, no matter how big or small his kit is. But I think it's just more of a mental thing, just to, it's like when you see Steve Jordan play, who's another in my top 5 heroes, when you just see him play like a 2-piece kit, I feel like I feel him playing, more than even as much as I hear the drums themselves, because there's not all these other distractions going on. It's just like, if he's just holding down kick, snare, hat, there's no faking it. There's not too many toms and cymbals to hit. So I feel like I'm feeling like what's going on in his back, in his spine. I feel that kind of thing. That's kind of the thing I have with smaller drum kits, maybe. And going back to Al Jackson and these simple players from the 60s, it's like you're hearing the human. They didn't even care about what kind of equipment they were playing. So I feel like I hear their attack more than, oh, I wonder what kind of drums they were playing. They didn't even know.
That's a very good point. And just while we're talking about equipment here, you mentioned getting your first snare drum and then getting your first drum set. What was your first full kit?
It was a no-name brand out of a place. We were living in outside of Boston, Massachusetts at the time when I was that age, and it was from this music store in New Hampshire, which is right above Massachusetts, and I didn't even go to pick it out. My parents went and got it for me, and it was just literally a no-name drum set. It was just bare wood, like spray painted black. And I wish. So this is a quick but funny story, and it was like, even then I could tell it was very cheap and not much to it. And so I played that for about a year, and I was just like, I need a real drum set. So the next Christmas, they got me a Tama Swing Star, and which was a lower model Tama, but for me it was, and I had that kit for 12 years, and so it had a lot of miles on it. But the dumbest thing I did was the other kit, I didn't think I would need it anymore. So I got the Tama one for Christmas, and then New Year's Eve, my crazy friends came over, and they said, "What are you going to do with the old kit?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I mean, I have a new kit. Why would I ever need another kit?" So we literally did a Keith Moon on it. But even more than Keith Moon, we smashed it to bits. I mean, we this thing, there was splinters in my carpet at home. My parent, my parents were always gone. They were actually always going back to Glasgow, and they would just leave like this 13-year-old in the house for a month. And my friends were coming over, and we're already partying at that age. And we like smashed this drum set to bits. And then the next day, my neighbor who played guitar, and he was a little bit older than me, he goes, "Hey, I want you to join my band. And, but we rehearse downtown, so you have to leave your drums downtown." And this is downtown Worcester, Massachusetts, where you don't want to leave your good stuff.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, man, I could have left the junky drum set down there and then had the nice Tamas at home. So and seriously, that was the next day when I said, why would I ever need 2 drum sets? And then all of a sudden, yeah.
And funnily enough, my next question normally is, do you still have it? But clearly not.
Well, not that one, that one, but the Thomas Swing Star, which let's call it my first real kit, does still exist. A friend has it at his studio.
Cool.
And I saw him a few years ago, and I thought, because I've never been one to like keep all this stuff from my past, and I really admire drummers that do, that just hold on to everything. I've just always kind of bought and sold and upgraded. So when I bumped into my friend a few years ago, I said, could I buy that back from you? And he said, well, if you're with DW, could you just get me a deal on a DW kit and then, do the exchange? And I'm like, wouldn't that be cool? I mean, it's still got the bumper stickers from my first band on it. It's still got the same pinstripe heads. And I just thought that would just be cool to have. So my friend was all excited about it because he wanted like a new kit, but it was going to be shipping from the West Coast to the East Coast. Like it was going to be an expensive exchange. And I thought, well, maybe I can do it when my band's on the road and we throw it in the truck or something like that. But it seemed to be a real pain, but I was still thinking about it and the sentimental value. And just after that, I was back home where I live in Portland, Oregon. And I went out to this place, Mississippi Studios, to see my friend play. And the opening band had the same exact drum set. It was an old Swing Star. And it sounded like crap. and I thought, okay, I don't want it anymore. Now that's not to say that could have been the heads, that could have been the way the guy was playing, but I just lost that love for wanting that first drum set back. And that kind of depressed me. I still could get it back. I could set it up at home. Maybe it would just be kind of good to have around, but I definitely lost my mojo for pursuing my friend to buy it back from him. So I've moved on.
That's a really cool story though. I love that. It's great. From one difficult question possibly to another here, what's been the highlight of your career so far?
About a year and a half ago, I've been in the band the Goo Goo Dolls for almost 8 years, and we did the Rock in Rio festival. That was probably a highlight just because it doesn't get any bigger. It really doesn't. And I'm very sentimental with those kind of things. Like I remember having the VHS tape of Queen because they were the first ones that did Rock in Rio. So that's a good one. But I mean, one of the highlights, honestly, I'm in the middle of it right now because I'm doing the new Goo Goo Dolls record. And I've done a few records with them already, but we're in the middle of recording the new record. And not only am I playing all the drums and percussion, but I'm playing all the keyboards too.
Cool.
And I'm involved in some of the arranging and writing. So, and they're still on Warner Brothers, a huge label. So that's been a huge highlight because it's way more than I would ever expect to do. I mean, I've never really tried to pursue doing the keyboards or I've never been aggressive about, you need to write with me. I need to be a co-writer and stuff like that. Not at all. It's just kind of organically happened that way. So And this, I mean, I just got back a few days ago. I've been in New York for 2 months and recording at another drummer's studio. Jerry Murata owns the studio in upstate New York. And so, you know, I've been camped out of the studio for 2 months and just obsessing about this record. And it's there's no outside producers, no outside writers. It's like a genuine Goo Goo Dolls record from head to toe. And I've just, you know, we have a keyboard player we use live who can play a million times better than I can, but we just kept this really tight COVID bubble. And I ended up doing all the keyboards, playing mellotrons and organs and stuff like that. And it was just way beyond the Call of Duty, you know? Yeah. And so that's been a huge highlight of mine. Yeah. From that, you know, if the record comes out well and you know, turn some heads and stuff like that, that'll be the ultimate, you know, because it's with a big name band. Yeah. And I am truly inside these songs, you know, not just showed up for 5 days, did all the drum parts like I have with other stuff, to really be there from like the origin of some of these songs. I mean, literally just jamming in the studio and writing some of these songs. It's a very old school way of making a record. You know, I love those old Stones records, or I love, like, say, like The Band, where like Levon Helm would jump on a guitar and then Richard Manuel would jump on the drums. Or it was, you know, musically it wasn't that much like that, but it was that type of old school, you know, money's not a problem, let's just, like, you know, experiment and run over there and run over and hit this Wurlitzer over here. And that's been a real dream, because that's, you know, like I started off the conversation today, you know, coming from more of a music consumer and loving records and loving the production on records and songwriting and all the elements that go into cool guitar sounds, cool keyboard sounds, and obviously cool drum sounds, you know. So that's been a real highlight that I didn't expect this late in my career, this late in the industry, to have that kind of time. Like I said, that old school kind of budget and time to do that. So it's a real feather in the cap to that. So that's been a big highlight too. So I would say, you know, from live, the Rock in Rio thing, you know, which is great. And I just love these because they're pretty recent things. You know, they're, you know, I always tell people, I said, you know, when I was 19, I expected to be playing arenas by then. And then it takes another 20 years. Just stay at it. You know, like, who knows when it'll come, you know. It's like, if you make it an ageless profession, it's not an impossible thing. You know, you can, you know, you have these little victories that you can enjoy, you know. So, and it doesn't matter if those things didn't happen, I would still be doing this, you know. Like I said, if music was easy, I wouldn't do it, you know. You know, or if I always say, if I was in it for the money, I would have quit when I was 15. You know, it's just, you gotta love this art more than you love money. And I can tell the people that give up because of that stuff. And so many, I mean, that's what somebody told me a long time ago. They said, this business is full of people that give up, you know? And I'm like, so when you take that into consideration, you say, well, I'm just going to keep plowing along, because there's a lot of people giving up. So, like, I don't want the people that give up to influence me, because they can be like, yeah, it is hard. I see you, you know, I understand what you're going through. Yeah, maybe I'll quit too. But I just say, like, well, you guys are all kind of falling down. I'm just going to keep treading up here. So I don't mean to, like, prey on the quitters, you know, but you have, I guess you would have to think about that in any profession, that persistence is what gets you further, you know. So anyway, long answer, but
no, it's good, and that's really good advice. The one thing I was wondering, going back to something you said earlier, was when you were recording that record, did you ever say, you know, when you were, you know, in the drum chair, did you ever say, let's do one of my songs?
It's okay. So it's really fun. It's really funny you bring that up, because no, I never verbally said it. but I was playing around with some chords when I was trying out the piano, you know, just sound checking. So everybody's in the control room, and I'm like, okay, I better not noodle too much, or I better not quote songs that my band doesn't like. You know, oh, we don't like Billy Joel, stop playing that or something, you know. So, you know, you got to read the room. You got to know where you are. And, but I was just jamming on a few chords that I had been kind of messing with for no reason. And then the singer comes over and he's like, I really like that. And he came over with his iPhone, and he just started humming along some melodies to it. I said, oh, that's cool. Maybe we'll revisit that. Well, that was like 2 months ago.
Mm.
And I never pushed it. He might have mentioned it once or twice, like, oh, remember that thing we were jamming on? Yeah. You know, pretty cool. And then we finished, you know, we finished the record last week. Now, I'm not going to say we finished the record, but we finished all the music. And it doesn't mean that it's finished. We can always go back and fix things or do, but he still has to do melodies and vocals. And so, you know, we've been together for 2 months, working 12-hour days, pretty satisfied with everything we got. We recorded more songs than we need for the record. So there's extras hanging around or ones to throw away. So I got home. I hadn't been home in 2 months, and I'm mowing this lawn that's this high, and getting back into my routine with the wife and everything. And, you know, I got a great text from my singer saying, hey, I was just listening to that thing we did, which is 2 months ago, you know, and he's like, we should still look to that. We should still look into that. And I'm like, I thought we were done with the record, you know? So, I mean, there's a highlight for you, you know, like something like that, like, okay, great, you know, but no, I didn't push it, you know, I let it happen because, yeah, I didn't want to be the butt of that joke, you know, like, let's, yeah, how about we play one of my songs, you know, like How the Drummer Get Fired, or, you know, the joke is that I don't think they ever did it, but the joke was always like John and Paul saying, it's too good, Ringo, save it for the solo record. Was their way of telling him, like, we don't need you on this record. You know? It's too good, Ringo, save it for the solo record. So yeah, so that's yeah. So yeah, was I thinking it? Yes. But I let it happen. Luckily, I let it happen. And that's another great bonus to being able to play other instruments, you know, because they saw that there was more. I mean, I could send them I do that with my band. I record a bunch of grooves at home and just send them and say, hey, if you're inspired to jam on a riff to this groove, you know, but that never goes too far. But just having a chance to sit at the piano and they hear like a couple notes that inspire them. I mean, that's another benefit of playing another instrument. I always inspire people, just learn a few piano chords and or strum on a guitar. You'd be surprised how much further you could get in an ensemble situation, you know? So,
and you mentioned previous Goo Goo Dolls records. Just for people that are interested in hearing you, what are the records that you've played on?
So the first one I did was called Boxes. So I think it's 2015 or 16, early 2016. So Boxes was the first one. And the first song on the record, I did a co-write with the two leaders. That was really thrilling. That was just very organic. And it's just a fun song. And it was all our influences wrapped up in one song. It was like, you know, Cheap Trick meets Springsteen meets, you know, it was just like, people don't notice it, but I can dissect where all our little riffs came from and stuff. And that's what's cool about the song, because it was all about, because we all grew up with the same music, you know, and they're a little bit older than me, but because I had an older brother, I know the music they listened to because I was trying to be like my brother. And so Boxes, and then we did an EP after that called You Should Be Happy. So that's another one. And then I did 2 live records with them, which is called The Audience Is This Way. So those there's like a volume 1 and a volume 2. I just played piano on an EP they just put out, called EP 21, meaning 2021. So that's it up until we put out this new record. So most of the records pretty much from 2016 up to now have me, and they got a lot of content coming out. We did this 20th anniversary of their most famous record, Dizzy Up the Girl, which has all their hits on it. So we did a whole tour where we played that album back to back, which was a thrill. And I really tried to copy the old drummer's parts. And so that record, well, that's coming out as like a live record and also a live DVD. We filmed 3 nights at this beautiful theater in Buffalo where the band is from. So that's coming out soon. So, and then there's, just little videos here and there. I've done a couple of music videos with them. And so a lot of content, for a band that's a little bit later in their career, I've gotten a lot of mileage out of it. And it's definitely, I've played with a lot of big artists, but once I played with them, I think it's just a band recognition name. I've played with a lot of singers, like they're very famous, but once you're in more of a band setting or something even more rock and roll, it's like all your friends from high school come out of the woodwork, Can we get into the show? And I'm like, well, I've been through your city like several times with other people. Oh yeah, we didn't like them. We want to come see this band, So do they like the band or like me?
And actually, this is a good chance to say, because you mentioned, other singers and so on that you've worked with. Something that people should check out is your Vic Firth interview. It's only sort of 10 minutes or so long, but just the way you talk in that interview is just really brilliant. And just, I don't know, I just found it really, just a really inspiring thing. So people should definitely go and check that out. Just, the way you talk about being in bands previously and the way that you kind of got to the Goo Goo Dolls sort of position. It's great. So yeah, definitely people should check out that Vic Firth interview.
Cool.
And we've talked about career highlights. Maybe now kind of going to the other end of the scale a little bit, maybe, but just to do with funny things that have maybe happened over the years.
How much time you have?
Have you ever had anything go wrong on stage, whether it be gear fails or brain fails, that you can tell us about?
Yeah, many. A few years ago, we were playing at House of Blues, San Diego, and with the Goo Goo Dolls. And the second we were doing it was during the Dizzy Up the Girl tour. So the whole first set was the Dizzy Up the Girl record. Then we did a 20-minute intermission. Then we came back and even played older songs from like their punk days, which was really fun. And but we had a curtain up on stage the whole time on the first set. And then when we came out for that second set, now this is right behind the drums, this curtain. And then for the second set, the curtain lowers down and there's a big logo of the name of the band, just to give the second set another kind of different atmosphere from the first set. And the stage at House of Blues, San Diego, is quite shallower than all the other stages we played. So this curtain came down and it landed right over me. I seriously thought ISIS got me. I was like, whoa, I was like covered. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm just stuck in this thing. The band's playing. I can't play. I can't see anything. And it gets pulled off me. And this thing came up and the whole band is laughing so hard. And that was one of the most epic fails. And I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it sucks that it happened to me, but I still love it. Like, I love watching that. I don't like people get hurt, but I do love like, what we would call Spinal Tap moments.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest ones. But yeah, there's so that's one. So I would
That's
have
cool.
to think hard of others, but there's plenty more. I mean, when you go back to the bar days, you know, to the small clubs and stuff like that, there's many, you know, there's fights that broke out on stage. Okay, so I'll do one. So I'll just go way back, and then this will be the last one. But so again, when I was starting really young, I'd already seen all these big bands in arenas. So it doesn't matter the size of place I was playing. I'm going to play like it's an arena, you know. So it doesn't matter. And so I had this thing. My band I had when I was about 15 or 16, we played outside one time in this parking lot, and it was just like this big crowd. And, you know, for me, it was like, wow, this is so exciting. And we're up on this big like flatbed truck, and so I said at the end of the song, for that last cymbal hit, I'm gonna throw the sticks and hit the cymbal, and you know, and I hit the kick drum with it. So it'd be like da bow, but I'm throwing the sticks, and I just did it, and the sticks went flying across the sky all the way to the back of this parking lot. And I see some guy catch the stick, and it was such a rock star moment, you know? So I'm like, well, that's my thing. That's what I'm going to do now. So the next time we're playing, you know, we're probably like in a VFW hall with a ceiling that's maybe 8 feet high. And I go to do that, bam, bam, hit it. And it hits the back of the singer. The stick bounced off the ceiling, hit the back of the singer. It's like, what? So I never did that again. Never did that again. And yeah, so yeah, those are pretty embarrassing on a very small level and on a big level. You know, and I welcome more. I can't wait. You know? Yeah. I'm pretty good. I mean, knock on wood, I've been really, really lucky with not dropping the sticks too much. I'm really pretty meticulous about my equipment. You know, and always have spare pedal, spare snare, and I'm very meticulous with that stuff. You know, so, and I know like when you drop a drumstick, and I mean, everybody notices. The audience notices when there's that 2 and 4 is just gone. You know, like for a bar, yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, it really is a big deal. So, but yeah, you know, it's all forgivable.
Now, I said that we would go back to the drum music side of things because you talked a bit about you know, reading earlier. So I know you've played with lots of different artists over the years. So how does it kind of work for you when you first get a gig with a new artist? How do you learn the material? So just a couple of examples. Do you just like listen to the tracks on Spotify or whatever? Or do you listen and transcribe it yourself? Or has it ever happened where someone's said, oh, Craig, here's the entire folder of the whole show written out in drum music for you. Here you go. Could you play through that whole folder for us?
I would say all those things have happened. So when I have my choice, the way I like to do it, if nobody has given me charts, if they just said, you know, here's a playlist or go on Spotify, you know, and learn these songs. What I'll do is, and if, especially a lot of these artists don't want you to read on stage, you know, they want you to, because they want to look like a performance in a band. And I'm behind that. And for years, especially when I didn't know how to read and transcribe that well, or even like I just didn't do it, even in a chicken scratch, I call kind of way, I would listen to this stuff so much. I would listen and listen and listen and listen and just ingrain it in my head and over and over and over. And I feel like that, in a way that was good, is I got so inside the music because I had obsessed with it, because I had to memorize it. But as the years go on, your memory goes, or if once I became more of a session guy and playing with so many different artists, I said, I have to transcribe this stuff. So even if my plan is not to be reading on the gig, I'll still write it out. Because what I've learned is if I just transcribe it right out of the gate, maybe listen to it once and then like go through and then hit pause and make my chart, it'll be in my memory because I actually spent the time to look at what it looks like on paper. So I actually don't really need the chart actually after I spend the time writing it out. And then I have the chart when it's there. And then I go to a rehearsal and sometimes I'm ahead of the curve. Sometimes it's like, okay, like I'm the one who wrote this out. I actually know the arrangement better than the writer sometimes because I spent that time writing out. So I encourage myself to do that, to just write it out no matter what, even if it's an easy song. And the way when it really hit me when I moved to LA like 20 years ago, and I'm not there anymore, but when I moved there and I really decided I got to become a session guy, that's what I got to do, is become a session guy. So I really got to brush up on reading and get used to it. One of the first artists I worked with, this singer out of Singapore, really talented, and the songs are cool, but they really sound the same. Like, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I love AC/DC and every song sounds the same, So I found it more difficult to memorize artist music that all sounds similar, because once you're playing this song, you're going to play the next song and you're going to fall into the same tempo. And then you're not going to know that this song, the little difference is there's a little fill or there's a bar of one, and you start mushing it all together. So especially when the music sounds similar, to not fake it to make it, to really treat these songs like they're individual songs. I learned that from doing years of blues gigs where the band is playing 3 chords on every song and most of the songs are shuffles. But if you really dig into it, you're like, I'm going to make this shuffle a different feel than the shuffle that's going to come after it. So I took that same approach to, that's why the writing, I always chart it out now, no matter what it is. I did do a couple gigs where the music was written out and they said, this is the way you got to play it. And I said, well, I'd like to hear it too, and then, so I'll hear it and then I'll look at the chart, because sight reading is going to be, I'm not great at sight reading. But 99% of the time I never have to sight read. I've just been lucky that way, or, as long as I just have some time to prepare. These classical musicians that just never listen to the music ahead of time and walk in and play it. I just don't understand that. I always want to hear something.
Yeah.
And usually I get to, and then I almost memorize the whole thing, but then the sheet music just becomes like a quick glance over it, and you write out that drum fill, it's like, oh, okay, here's where the drum fill comes, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good. And while we're talking about charting things out, it's something that I do quite a lot for students. And I've got a question for you, because you can hopefully answer this one for me. So many years ago, I charted out Iris, and I've written it out. I should send it to you actually, and you can just tell me if you think I'm right with the time signatures, because to me, there's some crazy time signatures things going on in that song, and to me. But the bit that really gets me, and I've listened to it over and over again, and I've watched you play it, and you play it differently to how I thought it was in the bridge, where it's that cat on that cat. To me, on the record, it sounds like like 3 kicks. But when I've seen you play it, you're doing like the first and the third, and then the second one like a snare. So really, my question is it 3 kicks, and then you've just slightly changed it, or
it's 3 kicks on the studio version. It is 3 kicks,
which is really hard to play. Yeah, like really. That's tough.
Yeah. I did learn it. Yeah, I remember that being a little tricky. I did learn it that way, and because when they had called me to do the gig, they had been playing with that guy like 18 years,
Mm.
and although like, I mean, his way of playing, I mean, I didn't really relate to much. He's not. I mean, I don't know. I thought he played a little on top of the beat and stuff like that, you know. But the guy came up with classic parts, you know, guy, and I try to honor those parts. I've never met the guy, but you know, and he's a big part of those songs. And I wouldn't want to play that. I mean, the fill he does in Slide is a killer fill, and I try to play it exactly like him, you know. Um, what's interesting is when I got in there, not to stretch this answer, but when I got in there, I wanted it to be seamless because these guys had never played with another drummer in that long, you know, a long time. He's not the original drummer, but he was the drummer that joined right when they became world famous. Mm. And they had another drummer for 10 years before who played on some of the early hits. But, you know, so I tried my best just to at least, I knew it was going to feel different. I can't play like that guy, but I just wanted to honor those little fills and stuff like that. So when we got to playing Iris, I played that part, and I think it felt as, you know, in the pocket as the record. I think, you know, I did work on that, and they were like, "Don't do that." I'm like, "Well, this is your most famous song. Like, you know, I don't want to not do that." And they said, "No. We feel it's too jumpy. It's too like pushy or something like that." They wanted it to feel a little, you know, not so much, you know, they wanted to feel like la da da la da da da, you know, so they wanted to kind of pocket it a little more, even though it's not a very pockety lick, you know, it's a very staccato, you know, orchestral kind of thing. So that's when I kind of worked in the snare a little more. Right. It was like, and yes, it's much easier to play. So, you know, because I'll hear it on the radio once in a while, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like what he played. I mean, that's a tricky thing, you know. But they didn't like it. They always thought it pushed. I think maybe because it was difficult. I don't know how he executed it every night. He was supposedly a very consistent drummer, from what I heard. He was like way like almost too consistent. They said like he never variated from anything. Is that a word? But varied. But so they just wanted things to be more you know, more in the pocket. There was another song, Black Balloon, where the old drummer plays these really cool fast fills, and like I copied those fills like note for note, and once I got in a rehearsal with them, they're like, oh, don't do that, you know. So I think there was all these things they wanted to change, but because he wrote the drum parts and because they just been playing together for so long, they might have gotten to a spot where they didn't really listen to one another, which is really weird, you know. But they might have just got, you know, maybe that all happened when they got so successful and they're like, okay, I did it, I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing. And I think when I came into the band, they had a second to kind of get the microscope and analyze what they're doing, you know, because like, you know, the bass player's really and he plays really in front. He's like a punk bass player, and the singer's got this great laid back voice. It took me like 3 weeks of playing with them to really find where that was. And what they've said to me is like, we never thought about, they're very street musicians. They don't really talk, you know, they just like to play. They're a very grudgy kind of band. And they said, we never really spent the time thinking of, you know, push and pull and, you know, slow it down and push it, you know, those kind of things. They just kind of like, it just kind of happened so fast for them that I think with me, and because they've been doing it so long, that they just became better musicians too. And not that their old drummer didn't become a better musician. Obviously he did. When you're doing 2,000 gigs, you're going to be a better musician. But I think they just had time to kind of analyze, and maybe because the old drummer, he was technically he technically wasn't like a full-time member, but he was a lot more of a full-time member than I am. You know, me with a few other guys in the band, I mean, we're kind of session guys playing with these two guys, even though we're in the band. You know, it's kind of a weird thing. And then, like I told you about making the record with them, that's why it's such a special thing, because I'm kind of brought in with the songwriters, and I'm a lot more involved in that. But you know, but politically, you know, it's their band, you know, it's their name. It's like Hall & Oates, you know, it's their band. So, but the old drummer was definitely there during the MTV years, and he was in all the videos, and they were more of a trio kind of band. They were more merchandise. He kind of shared in that same aspect of the band. So maybe they were just off and running and they just did what they did. But once I got in it, like I said, they really want to break the songs down and filter out some of the things that maybe they wanted to change, but they just never did, because he was more of his own voice. Now they had somebody they could tell what to do. They could just say, stop that.
Stop those 3 kicks.
Yeah, stop those 3 kicks. We don't need them there. You know, try this, try that. And there's been a few things like that. So I think they liked that I learned the stuff. And if, you know, a great guitar player that is a great friend of mine I played with for years, he just said, the best thing to do is just like learn the stuff as close to the record as possible, and then do your own thing. Do it in that order. You know, some guys try to come in a little too hard doing their own thing, and you can't do that, especially coming into a band with the same guy that's been there for 18 years. You know, you have to know that they're creatures of habit, and you have to honor that. You know, I knew when I went in there, I said, I might not be enough like the old guy, and they might just be like, this feels too weird, you know, like, you know, but luckily they've welcomed that change, you know, so I can ride that line of honoring the old drummer and his great parts, and then bringing my own pocket to it, you know. And so, you know, now it's been almost 8 years, so we're in a different headspace, you know, with that. But cool. I don't take that stuff for granted. You know, I respect everything that came before. You know, I try to know my history. You know?
Oh, excellent. Now, I've got a couple of curveball questions for you now, Craig. And the first one of those...
Well, what were those? What were those?
Those were just normal questions. So, and thanks for clearing that up about Iris. That's very good. So my first curveball question for you: what are your hobbies away from drums?
Not much. I mean, really, you know, piano. I mean, I guess reading, I guess podcasts. I don't know if those are hobbies. Those are just kind of what we all do now. You know, being outdoors as much as possible. My wife has her own business that is based around Oregon native plants. Okay. Yeah, and so we're really into, you know, just learning more about natural habitats and what's better for the ecosystem. And so they're not really hobbies, but it's probably what I get kind of drawn to when I get away from the drums, because that's what's going on in our house. You know, she runs the business out of the house. Our whole yard is has everything is native here. It's native, indigenous to the area. You know, we don't have plants that are from New Zealand or ornamental stuff, you know, so that's kind of a purpose that we have. And her company is focused on that. You know, she makes items that are focused for promoting native plants. Like, you know, don't buy your plants at Home Depot and that are from China or something, you know, like make your garden more, pick all the stuff that should be in your garden. Because if you do that, then the insects and the birds and all the stuff, they'll be attracted to that, because that's what's in the nature of it, you know. So it's more my wife's thing, but I help her a lot with it, and that becomes kind of an interest out of that, and I'm slowly learning more and more. And I should, because, you know, she's doing well and she's going hard with it. So she's like, well, if you can't play drums someday, like you should maybe pay attention to what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah. So that's it. But no, I mean, not really. Like I said, when I was younger, I played a lot of sports, but drums just took it over, and I was so freaked out with getting injured or something like that, because I didn't go to college, and I knew I'd have nothing else to fall back on. So yeah, I should find some hobbies, because I see some musician friends so obsessed that they're going crazy. They're just going crazy, But luckily, I mean, like I said, I play piano and a little guitar, so that's my escape from the drums. But I'm still doing music.
Yeah. The whole point of that question, where that question has come from for me, is that I think one way or another, drums for all of us started as a hobby. And you kind of talked about this earlier on in this interview. It was something that we just had a passion for. I'm talking past tense. I'm not saying we still don't have that passion, but it obviously now pays the bills in one way or another, whether it's teaching, recording, touring. But I think it can still very much be a hobby, something that we love doing. We're just fortunate and we've worked hard so that it becomes something we get paid to do.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. And quickly going back to my wife's business, that kind of started off as a hobby. And now I see her, making money at it. And it's like a legit business. And that's inspiring, because we weren't really paying attention when we were younger, but that's what we were doing. We were doing this thing that we were very passionate about, and then somebody gave us $100, for playing a bar, and we're like, well, this is pretty good, but it was always icing on the cake. It was never, we would have been doing this no matter what. And then you talk about teaching and stuff like that. That took me a long time to understand that that's all part of everything that we do. I had gotten to a certain age where, I'd gotten these offers to play weddings, and then some people wanted to take some lessons from me. And then I just thought, well, am I still a professional musician? And a drummer I admired said to me, he's like, that's when you are a professional musician, when you teach, when you do weddings, because I thought a professional drummer is Larry Mullen Jr.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's a famous drummer. That's a guy that won the lottery. A professional drummer is somebody that, and luckily I learned that in my 20s, because, if somebody told me now, hey, are you going to go teach, or are you going to go play a wedding? I'd feel like, am I some failure or something like that? It's like, no, it's all part. It's exactly what we do. It's all the same thing. And I mean, now with this COVID thing, it's like you're really seeing, all the guys that tour, and you see how we're all kind of integrated with people doing stuff online and doing sessions online and everything about it. It's like we're all professional drummers, and we've all been at home for a year. So it's like, okay, we all still call ourselves drummers, even when we're not doing anything, or when we're only doing sessions, or only teaching, or only touring, So I learned that at a young age, because I would see guys that didn't go through that versatility of being a professional. And then they get in their 40s, and their band fails, and they get dropped from their record deal, and they don't know how to play a shuffle pattern, and they can't do any other gigs. They don't know how to teach. They don't have the patience for it, or they don't have the wisdom for it. And it's like, that kind of sucks. I mean, I'm glad that I have those skills, and everybody I relate to, and everybody I know that's successful has all the skills, the teaching skills, and being versatile, and not being they don't pigeonhole themselves, and like, yeah, I'd love to do a little jazz gig or something like that, because you're always learning. There's no such thing as an undignified gig. It really isn't.
And I said to someone the other day, you say about you're always learning. I said to someone the other day, you can't complete the drums. It's not like a video game where you're like, yes, finished.
No. The more you learn, the more you find out you don't know.
I like that.
Yeah, it's so true. So that's why so many people give up. They really because they're just like, well, I can't do this for the rest of I can't keep learning for the rest of my life. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's what keeps you young, that's what keeps you wanting to do it. That, I mean, the people that are overly competitive or they're trying, like you said, they're trying to get to a finish line. It's like, or there's even some musicians I know that I feel like they've lost that. They've lost their hero worship, and that kind of, like, they're trying to be the best. They're trying to be their own thing. And it's like, if I can't have the Jim Keltners and these people to inspire me, I don't want to do it. I need to get high off of people that are way better, and just, I need to get inspiration constantly, and there's a million people that I don't even know about. They're going to inspire me for the rest of my life. I'm going to keep discovering different drummers and get deeper into certain music. And like, who wouldn't want that? So there's some people that really have a tunnel vision, and they really equate the money, and I just want to get through this pipeline, and then I'm either going to quit, or if it doesn't take off, then I'll do something else. I don't know how to do anything else. I'm too dumb to quit, like, I don't know, so it's a blessing and a curse, but I try to make it a blessing. And, and just say, like, okay, like, I don't have those skills to fall back on. Some people say, I'm going to become a lawyer or something like that. I'm like, some days I wish I could, but I wouldn't even know where to start, so, so you just got to be careful, stay away from credit cards, and, like,
talking about staying away from bad things leads me a little bit into my penultimate question here. This is the most anticipated question of this entire interview series, Craig. So big one for you here. Here we go. What's your favorite cookie?
Snickerdoodle.
See, now, me in the UK, you're going to have to explain.
I knew. See, that's why I picked it. It's just a lot of butter and a lot of sugar. It kind of looks like shortbread, but I don't even know what it is. All right, I'm going to go for number 2, and you still might not know this one. Oatmeal raisin.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. All right. I didn't want to go with the obvious chocolate chip, although I had a bite of one yesterday that was best I ever had. But I would say oatmeal raisin. Yeah, would be my favorite.
Okay. So, let's just go back, just rewind a second there. So a snicker noodle, did you say?
No, snickerdoodle.
Snickerdoodle. So that's got nothing to do with, do you have Snickers bars in
Nope.
the US? No? So it's got
Oh,
nothing
yeah. But Snickers are big here, but no, the snickerdoodle has nothing to do with a Snicker bar.
Right.
No,
okay.
It's like, I'm trying to, I don't even know what's in it. I mean, there's nothing that pops out. There's not like nuts or chips or anything like that pop out of it.
Right.
Yeah, but it's my favorite. It's my favorite when I see it. You don't see it everywhere.
Okay.
It's usually a homemade kind of baked cookie. Like, I don't know if there's, like, how you have packets of Chips Ahoy or Oreo or,
Right.
do you have it?
Is this the right kind of thing?
That's it. Bingo.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up a recipe and
you will. Yeah. You will be a fan. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the next part to that question is, would you dunk your snickerdoodle or oatmeal raisin?
I would dunk it in milk.
Okay.
Like, I wouldn't say I would go out of the way to find the milk, but if the milk's there, it's getting dipped, especially the, no, not the snickerdoodle. I wouldn't do it with milk. I would do the oatmeal raisin. And even that, maybe, but a chocolate chip, that's being dipped.
Yeah.
That's definitely going with the milk. The milk will come out of the fridge if it's there. If it's not, it doesn't matter, But
there's been some fantastic answers, and like the UK guys, because we have such a range of obviously what we call biscuits over here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know,
Digestive biscuits. I grew up with digestive biscuits. Yeah.
there we go. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, ginger snaps. You know.
Did you say you were in Glasgow?
Glasgow for first 15 summers of my life. Yeah.
So was there a lot of shortbread going on?
Yeah, and my mother makes definitely the best Scottish shortbread. I mean, way better than the Walker's brand.
Yeah.
Like just incredible. Yeah. I mean, that's something I look forward to. Trying to think what else. I mean, the ginger snaps were a big thing, but all the UK chocolate stuff I grew up with, the Maltesers, and I wish they made more of those club bars. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
You know,
yeah.
what they only have a few flavors now. I was just in the UK last year. We actually rehearsed in Glasgow, which was great, and I saw a bunch of family. But they used to have so many more flavors of those club bars. They used to have the fruit kind, and those are, you get them in those long packets.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, just the way the chocolate is in the UK, there's something creamier in that Cadbury kind of chocolate. I don't really like the chocolate over in America much. You know, it has to be a real specialized, like the Hershey chocolate tastes like wax, you know, and M&M's, like, you know, it's not that great, but I love British chocolate. You know, I definitely have British dental work, you know. I mean, I'm 100%, you know, I'm the only American born in my whole family, you know. So my dentist has always been like, you have those soft British teeth, you know.
So on to my final question for you, Craig. If you could give just one piece of advice to your younger self, so when you first started out learning the drums, I mean, maybe for you, like, you know, when you first started taking it a bit more seriously, what would that advice be?
Don't say no to anything. Know that there's, you know, as a friend of mine always jokes, you know, I'd love to do it once. He always says, you know, to any gig or anything like that, I'd love to do it once. You know, it's his way of saying, I'll try it, but not commit to it. Yeah. But no, I mean, I just to not say no, you know, very basic stuff. Keep an open mind. What I've learned is there's a redeeming quality in everything you do, good or bad. You know, don't be so apprehensive. Don't be so too cool for school. You know, just say yes, and say yes to things, try things out. Because there's a lot, I definitely, there's probably been a few opportunities that I wish I could go back and say, you know, you should have just gone for that. You should have been a little more persistent on that stuff. Luckily, there's, you know, the opposite did happen with me. Luckily, I did stick in there and say, but there's definitely a few things that, you know, I definitely have a 50-50 thing that happened with me with saying too many no's, but I said a lot of yeses too. So that's probably the best advice I could give to myself, is to say less no's, but also the advice that I would give to somebody younger. You know, don't pigeonhole yourself, try it. It's all music. You know, like, I don't play jazz, I don't play rock, I don't play country. You know what? It's all music. You know, I've heard great rock drummers in country bands. I've heard great jazz players in rock bands. You know, it's all music. Don't worry about all that stuff. And get a metronome. Yeah, I went through all my teens and early 20s like no metronome, or you know, like, I mean, I really didn't. And then started recording in my early 20s and be like, did that click just speed up? Oh no, that's me. So, you know, yeah. And yeah, my younger self would have taken more lessons, would have tried to do things hand in hand, tried to be the good self-taught with good ears, but also steadily learning to read at the same time. And, you know, hand technique, you know, not doing this and, you know, and then 5 years later, sore, and then an older drummer of mine is correcting me and stuff like that. Just those years where you're practicing 10 hours a day, whether playing to records or on your pad, I can't say you can't get those years back, but life gets in the way. And you really need, so if somebody's watching this that's 15 or something, and if you don't put that time in at that age, you might, even if you become a successful player, you might not get that kind of time back.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there's just something. I mean, I admire people that are in their 60s and they're still shedding 8 hours a day, and the Virgil Donatis and these kind of people do that stuff, but they're making a career of that stuff. They're clinic players, they're doing that. But if you're in bands and you're trying to hustle and all that stuff, those 10-hour practice days, you'll never get those back, because you won't have the time, or you might grow a kind of laziness to it because you're too focused on survival and stuff like that. So learn all those fundamentals. And I know I'm twisting this question a little bit more because I'm actually thinking about it because you asked it. I would go back to my younger self and just say, like, man, get the fundamentals down, because I was such a fast learner and a self-taught learner that I skipped a lot of fundamentals, and I was behind the curve, even becoming a professional pretty much, it's like, wow, I am behind it. I got to go back and learn this. And, and then the reading, that was the other thing that came after. And so try to do it all at the same time if you can. I could have taken, 4 of those hours of the 10 that I was playing along to Rush records and, and Zeppelin records. I could have taken that time and just said, sit at the pad, work on the reading, get through stick control book, and then jam along to whatever records you want, and I think I know a lot of great players, that's the way they learned. And they got feel, but they got technique, and they got chops with reading. And like, it took me a lot of years to catch up to be that much of a well-rounded player, I think, so yeah, that's
cool. That's good.
That one's probably more important than even the first answer I had. I think I had to dig deep for that. But yeah, just don't skip the fundamentals, Craig. That's what I would say.
Craig, thank you so much for spending your time with us at DrumWise here today. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure, my pleasure, Tom. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.